Okay, so the July 8th, 2015 session of the Board of Appeals is now in session. We've got the first two items before us is approval of the minutes for the May 5th, 2015.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2015 Board of Appeals meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. I was not at that meeting. Okay, motion carries. The next one is approval of the minutes for June 10th, 2015.
I make a motion that we approve the June 10th, 2015 minutes for the Board of Appeals.
I hear a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstaining as well.
Well, at least three of us carry it.
I think that is 302, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So,
I think you're right. Okay, and finally before us is a matter of a special exception for BOA 7026-2015, Cellco Partnerships for an amendment to the special exceptions at a telecommunications facility on 8700 Emery Grove Road. Carolyn, would you please introduce this?
Yes, I will. This is a public meeting on Board of Appeals case BOA 7026-2015. It amends special exception BOA 3688-2013. No public hearing is required for an amendment to special exception. At the present time, there are 14 exhibits in the record files. They are referenced in an exhibit list in the files. The individual exhibits may be reviewed during the course of the meeting or in the Planning and Code Administration office during regular business hours at City Hall or on the city's website. Any objections to the receipt of any exhibit should be noted prior to the closing of the record, otherwise they will be deemed received in evidence. The application requests an amendment to special exception BOA 3688-2013 to add 12 panel antennas and related equipment to an existing telecommunications facility located as part of Parcel A, the resurvey of Fellowship, 8700 Emery Grove Road, Gaithersburg, Maryland. The property is located in the RA low-density residential zone, and the special exception is allowed by Section 24-2511 of the zoning ordinance, Chapter 24 of the City of Gaithersburg Code. And just for reference, here's an aerial of the property highlighted in blue, just north of Mid-County Highway and west of Emery Grove Road. And the city boundary is just around this property line. Here to represent the applicant is MG Diamond, and I'll have him come on up. And if you want me to move, you can all come up. Okay.
Mr. Diamond, I understand you're an attorney?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, since you're an officer of the court, we're not going to swear you in on this.
All right, thank you.
If you may, proceed.
Good evening. MG Diamond with the law offices of M. Greg Diamond, 7500 Woodmont Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland, on behalf of Cellco Partnership, which does business as Verizon Wireless. With me this evening are Hillary Morrison, who is a zoning and real estate specialist with SCE Engineering, and also Jake Tarone, who is an engineer with Morris Ritchie Associates. They're here to back me up and answer any questions you may have about the application. As you know, this application is about an existing communications facility at 8700 Emery Grove Road. At that site, there is a 112-foot high monopole, which is owned by SBA Communications. The special exception has had a number of appearances here before the Board of Appeals, the original approval and a number of amendments over the years. The underlying land is actually owned by Montgomery County Public Schools. It's sort of an outlot from one of their school sites, but it's not. This property is not actually at a school. What Verizon Wireless is proposing to do is attach antennas to the existing monopole. We're not changing the height of the monopole. It's a 112-foot monopole Verizon is proposing to attach antennas at the 80-foot center line of the pole. And the Verizon Wireless will have equipment at the base of the pole on the ground. There is an existing communications compound that's already enclosed by a fence. There'll be no change in that outer perimeter of that fence line. Verizon Wireless has space inside the fenced compound. It's basically putting in a concrete pad and equipment on that pad, as well as a backup electrical generator. The good news for the Board of Appeals is this will probably be the last time that you'll get a hearing like this, an amendment to a special exception for a telecom tower where someone's just attaching antennas. There is pending right now before the mayor and city council a text amendment which is revising and updating the telecom ordinance. As a result of that text amendment, which we hope will be adopted a little later this summer, staff would have been able to approve a simple application like this without having to ruin your summer evening. But let's jump through the hoops, since we still have to do that to make this one official, since the ordinance hasn't been amended yet.
And if there's any question about that, that is mainly to comply with FCC orders that have been issued just over the last several months, and that have become effective very recently. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure. So just very briefly, Verizon Wireless is proposing to install 12 antennas, as I indicated, with an 80-foot center line on the pole. This type of special exception is a permitted use in the zone, as the board has approved this special exception site on numerous occasions and amendments to that special exception. The proposed antenna size of 6 foot by approximately 2 foot, 6 foot high, 2 foot wide antenna is a permitted antenna under the zoning ordinance. There's an existing chain link fence surrounding the monopole, creating kind of the communications compound where all the carriers have their equipment. There'll be no change in that fence line. The nature of the use at the site, a telecommunications facility, will not change at all. It is presently a telecom facility, and after Verizon's antennas are installed, it will still be a telecommunications facility. There will be no detrimental effect to the use, peaceful enjoyment, economic value, or development of surrounding properties or the general neighborhood. Once this is installed, I don't think anyone in the general neighborhood will really know that anything has changed, other than the fact that your Verizon Wireless phone will work better in that area. The nature of the facility being installed will cause no objectionable vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, toxicity, glare, or physical activity. After the initial installation, this type of facility is visited once a month or less, so the effect on traffic and parking is basically negligible. A special exception of this type is in harmony with the general character of the neighborhood in relation to its design and scale. This board has already found that a telecommunications facility is in harmony with the neighborhood. Adding antennas to the existing pole is really the intent of the city's legislation. The city wants carriers to co-locate on existing structures rather than build another tower nearby. And so rather than Verizon building its own tower and putting antennas on it, co-locating on an existing tower is in furtherance of the public policy. Staff has prepared a draft resolution, and the applicant has reviewed that resolution and the conditions placed on approval. It looks good to Verizon Wireless, and myself and the other witnesses are here to answer any questions you may have about the facility. Otherwise, looking forward to an early evening. Thank you.
Well, any questions you may have?
Just have one minor one, because I was going through the files and maybe I missed it. when I go around to some of these, projects and everything with the existing towers out there, sometimes the fences and the facilities just look weathered, and who actually will be in control of keeping those, up to date and clean and,
So SBA Communications, the owner of the telecommunications of the pole, ultimately it's their special exception that we're amending. So they're responsible for the envelope around the facility and the maintenance of the pole. Individual carriers, their responsibility according to our leases, are limited to the little bit of ground space that we lease and the space we have on the pole. But the envelope that you're describing is SBA Communications, the holder of the special exception.
I do have a couple of questions, and it's really out of curiosity more than anything else. I think this is the first time that we've had before us somebody proposing to put, a fifth set of antennas, at least in in the time I've been on the board, on a tower. And I guess that you guys went and contracted for, it looks like fairly extensive structural analysis to make sure that the pole could take the weight. Is that because it is the fifth one going on?
Yes. Every time there's any change to the loading of the tower,
Sure.
Structural analysis is done. And, it's the only way to be certain that the foundation and everything else about the tower
I
is...
realize that. It's just that I really haven't seen that. This is fairly complete, more than I've seen before.
Sure.
Also, you said these individual antennas are 6 feet by 2?
6 foot tall, 2 feet wide. That's correct, or a little less than 2 feet wide.
Oh, that's fairly large. Is there a reason for that, or is I assume that they're carrying both data and voice?
That's right. So the radio engineers at Verizon Wireless are constantly changing out antenna designs based on what's available on the market to best run their network. Different carriers use different radio signals,
Sure.
and each of those radio signals operates on different type of antennas. Some of the antennas are known as a dual mode, so they'll carry 2 different sets of radio frequencies. This is just what the radio engineers have decided best fits the circumstances for this location, acknowledging that this is a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, and it's surrounded by other cell sites, and the engineers are designing it to fill a gap in coverage and interoperate well with the cell sites around it. Beyond that, I'm not sure I can...
No, that's okay. I was just curious. The other thing is that I noticed in the coverage maps, you're filling a pretty big hole out there. You may not be able to answer it if it really isn't necessary, but how did that hole wind up being there for so long? It's so large.
I can answer that question.
Oh, good.
This has been an open file for me for many years. It's a cell site that Verizon gave the nickname Calypso, and I'm not sure what the origin of that. The RF engineers just give it a name and it sticks forever. There were issues of who owned this pole and how full it was, and I believe a space opened up on this pole. Verizon had been looking in this neighborhood for a while and had been considering building a second pole, had been looking for other options in the neighborhood when a space opened up on this structure. I'm not sure exactly what the history... Nextel gave up. So the Nextel Sprint merger event, sometimes they kept 2 sets of antennas on a pole, and over the years they've sort of combined their 2 sets of array into one or got rid of one. And so that opened up space on the pole, and Verizon had been itching to get something in this neighborhood for quite a while, and the opportunity opened up.
Okay. Well, thank you for feeding my curiosity.
Sure.
That's basically what it is. So nobody has any other questions? Can I hear a motion to close the record? Anybody?
Okay. Move that the record for BOA-7026-2015, an amendment to special exception application, be closed.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So, do you want to discuss this, or anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
I thought you brought up a good point about the structural analysis of the pole.
Well, I hadn't seen one quite like that before,
Yeah.
so it struck me, and I thought I realized the reason why there are so many going on. It's a tall tower. No other comments? No comment?
We're getting pretty good at this. We've heard it
Yeah,
all.
just when we're getting good at it, suddenly it's going away.
Right.
All right. Yeah, Okay, well, can I hear a motion to approve or deny the application?
All right, I make a motion that the Board of Appeals, based on the findings and conclusions outlined in the draft resolution, approve amendment to special exception application BOA 7026-2015, Cellco Partnership for 12 antennas and related equipment at an existing telecommunications facility at 8700 Emery Grove Road, and adopt resolution BOA 7026-2015 with the conditions as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carolyn, I don't think there's anything else on the agenda tonight.
We have nothing else on the agenda. The next meeting is scheduled for August 12th, I believe. But at the current time, we do not have any new applications, so stay tuned. That meeting may get canceled, but the deadline is next week, so we don't know yet.
Frank, any comments on the legal side? Are we okay?
No, not at all. As I was pointing out, the telecom amendment, actually, Caroline's had worked on that primarily, but it really had been a project that's been going on for the last several months, and it's largely because of some FCC orders that were proposed in the fall and only became effective in April. And in some ways, a lot of municipalities are struggling with how to deal with it, because in some ways our zoning outside of process didn't even allow small cell types of devices that are frequently used now, not so much for antennas, but just to enhance the existing coverage.
Sure.
So it really covers an awful lot of ground, and one of the impacts, because part of the FCC rules lay out that there are certain very strict timelines, and where he talked about co-locations on existing facilities, those are particularly covered. There's a fairly tight timeline, and there are really only certain inquiries that can be addressed, including the structural analysis that
Yeah.
you brought up, because when you're doing a co-locating, you're adding something to an existing pole. You want to make sure.
Yeah,
So
especially when
so
they're
we
that
do go through the
size.
permit process on that, and had to establish that. So that, I believe, is coming up
It's
for...
it's going to the mayor and council, hopefully for final action on July 20th.
So-
And if it passes, I believe it's August 10th, it would become effective,
Very good.
So
which
that's,
is before our next meeting.
Okay.
so there may be telecom issues that do
Yeah.
still come to the Board of Appeals, but it wouldn't be this type of a permit because of the co-location.
Right.
And the only other thing I would suggest is, and in terms of making a record, thought you did very well, that there were some comments, and it was clear where your position was, but I have seen some of the other boards, they'll simply start on one end and say, okay, Mr. Noble, what is your view? Do you have any questions? And then you say, I don't have any, I'm satisfied. You ended up doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that is sometimes what I've seen very deliberate. And I've seen sometimes some folks will say, oh, that takes an extra couple of minutes. Not really. Gets it through very quickly, actually. but you establish the record that it's very clear what each member thinks, or if they had any questions, and when it comes out to be unanimous, it's clear where everybody was. You ended up doing that,
Yeah.
but sometimes that's just a tactic that I have seen used that turns out to be very effective, so.
Well, we tend to poll on either
You
side.
do, yeah, that's exactly what happened, so that worked very well.
Okay, well, there being no further business or comments, may I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So it is. We are